Hey guys, on today's episode, we're gonna be heading over to my buddy Jim's house. Yeah, long time no see, man.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Now, Jim is a Jeep fanatic.
Oh, it's going back on the road, and then eventually one day I'll be buried.
He built this crazy rock crawler. Then he got called into the military, went overseas, and the car sat for years and years. It's got mold on it, it's disgusting. So we're gonna head over there now, hear his story, pull the car back, hopefully clean it up, and get it back on the road very soon. Super pumped about this one.
Good to see you.
Yeah, long time no see, man.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So, you're now ready to get her cleaned up.
It's time, yeah.
Tell me about the story here. I love hearing the backstory.
Okay, so when I was in the first grade, sitting on the bus, we were all talking about what we were going to be when we grew up, what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to join the Army. I said, but one other thing I know I'm going to do, I'm going to build a Jeep Wrangler.
Really?
Yep. So when I got out of the service, I went and I bought the thing, and then I started building it. And I ended up shorting the transfer case. I blew the rear end, so I had to change it to a Rubicon rear end that I found at a junkyard. Had to change it to a 4-cylinder front axle to match that for the gearing, and I axle trussed that, and then I did all the electrical work.
How long has it been sitting here?
8 years.
8 years.
8.
Under this tree, and clearly I can see the tree has just come down.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So now it's time to get this thing cleaned up. All right, so I'm gonna clean this up. I can only imagine what I'm gonna find in here, and then once it's all safe for you to kind of get in and tinker around, what are the plans for getting this back on the road?
Oh, it's going back on the road, and then eventually one day I'll be buried in it. That's the plan.
I can't promise anything other than I can clean it for you. I love this type of story. This is just so fun. I'll see you in a couple days.
That's it.
All right. With that, we loaded her up and brought her back to the studio for a better look under the lights. There was mold, green moss, spider webs, twigs, dirt, and lichen growing everywhere from sitting under the trees for so many years. As you'd expect, pretty much the same thing on the inside of the cab. Years of leftover trash, off-road tools, equipment, parts, but most of all, just wires. I mean, tons and tons of wires. The wires were running under, through, and on top of brittle yet soggy carpet, but step one was just to cut off the tow cable. This is all gotta go. Jim's planning on replacing the winch and, of course, the old cable, so he suggested I cut it off before we get started. Power wash time. Next, I filled the foam cannon with Boost, Anti-Salt, and Brute Wheel Soap. This combo has some extra strength for super dirty and greasy areas of the car. Then I let it sit a bit to loosen up the grime while I started cleaning the Krager wheels and the off-road rubber. Then I agitated the baked on dirt with a blue towel, which is normally reserved for wheels. I just didn't want to use my super nice soft blue wash towels because afterwards I just have to toss it out and I didn't want to do that. Same thing on the engine and under the hood as well with Titan 12 degreaser. A ton of oil and grease stains came right off with the higher pH cleaner. Okay, I'm behind the camera now. The car has been washed and it just kind of dried on its own in 10 minutes. That's when you know there's just no protection whatsoever. And you can see deep into the paint here, there's just kind of this like layer of haze or grime or however you want to describe it, and it's embedded in the paint. So what I'm gonna do is wet it again, and then I'm gonna clay it and see if anything comes out. If it doesn't come out, I can guarantee you I'll go in with a straight cut wool pad with a little bit of polish, and that polish is gonna tickle everything in the pores here, all that junk, and pull it right out. So I'm gonna have to blow the pad out a lot, but this is gonna look fantastic when I'm done. I bet you it's gonna be perfectly flat, really shiny, but you can see that's just years of built up leaf, from the trees and just leaves and going through the seasons, and the heat expands and contracts and expands and contracts, and as it does it falls deeper and deeper into the paint. And so that's why this is so hard to get out right now. But once I hit it with that polisher, oh my gosh, it's gonna look fantastic. To clay the paint, I first used the same soap and the same towel I used previously on the wash, but this time I used it as lubrication along with a light clay bar. And just because the paint was so bad and the pores were so full of junk, the clay bar didn't actually have any major effect on it. So I'd have to get the wool pad out. Before I could start polishing the paint, I first needed to dry it with my wall-mounted Master Blaster. Now this was good because I not only dried the paint, but also the trapped leaves and twigs I couldn't get out with the power washer. This thing actually blew a lot of that out, so it was a kind of a double-edged sword here, so it was pretty good. With the outside looking and certainly smelling a whole lot better, it was time to unpack the Jeep. And I gotta tell you, Jim had everything you could ever imagine for off-roading, including a beehive and a spreadsheet tracking how horrible you slept out in the woods. Never seen that before in my life, and I've been cleaning cars for years. I found guns, I found crazy stuff in cars, but never a worksheet of sleep interruptions. Something tells me that if you get up in the middle of the night to update a spreadsheet about how horrible you're sleeping, you're gonna be pretty cranky the next day. But the bigger question is, why do you need to document? Why do you need to know how horrible you slept over the week? What does that have to do with camping? If you guys know, leave a comment below. Before I removed the soft top, I watched a quick video to make sure I wasn't gonna break anything that might be super brittle from just sitting outside for all these years. And once I got it down, I unplugged and then chased wires and random garbage everywhere throughout the cabin. Next, I removed, or at least I tried to remove, the seats and the bolts that were completely rusted out. So I sprayed some PB Blaster to loosen them up. I worked them back and forth, but clearly it didn't work. Now, after breaking Steve's tool, I then called in for reinforcements, which of course is just Steve himself, to help me think through how to remove the rusted bolt without stripping it. The plan from here was to actually work it forwards and backwards with the impact gun to slowly work it out without breaking it. One down and one to go, but this bolt doesn't want to move. The new plan now is to heat it up like we did in our very first video together when I moved into the studio all those years ago. It was the dirtiest Chevy Tahoe ever, and he helped me remove the seats with this bolt heating tool. If you were ever in doubt, this is what my hero looks like. First, we tried from the top because the nut underneath was covered by body panels, and as you can see, it was smoking from the heat. We tried it again and no go. For attempt number 2, Steve tried to locate the nut from underneath and hit it with PB Blaster. With Steve heating from below, I tried the impact gun, then the torque bar, and no go once again. But then he got the super long torque bar and she started to budge a little bit. So then he added some more PB Blaster and we saw some movement, and then we finally got her out without breaking her. Next, I removed the back seat and the center console before removing the wet and brittle carpets. Because this is an off-road beast, there were a ton of aftermarket compressors and tools built into the Jeep that require a ton of patience, some muscling, and lots of tracing wires and hoses around the cabin to find what was plugged into what. Ta-da! Finally, with all the aftermarket stuff and seatbelts and carpets out of the Jeep, I used the blower to push the junk and the garbage and the loose change everywhere out of every crevice to make vacuuming easier later on. Once vacuumed, I wire brushed a few spots of oxidation on the driver's side floor, then coated in primer rust inhibitor in a few layers to slow the rate of oxidation. While that was drying, I cleaned the moldy interior plastics with ammo lather and an interior brush before using the steam machine and wiping dry. Next up, I removed the seat covers and cleaned the fabric by spraying shag fabric cleaner first, allowing it to soak for about 2 minutes or so, then using the power drill brush to work the cleaner deep into the fibers before steam vacuuming the lifted dirt into the reservoir. Two white stripes are double-sided tape that has embedded itself into the fabric. To remove them, I soak the glue in rapid remover, then steam machine the area to introduce heat and slowly remove the glue without damaging the fabric. When I was all done with both seats and the back seat, the reservoir was just filled with smelly, sweaty, brown water. Better here than in the seats, of course, but man, did this thing stink. While I was working on the seats, Jordan was cleaning up the center console and found a human tooth along with more change. This Jeep just keeps on giving and giving. With all of that and the tooth behind us now, it is time to focus on the paint. First, I'm using my all-new Ammo Shear cutting 6-inch wool pad along with my exfoliate polishing fluid. As you can see from the side profile, the top has a slight taper, but the sides are actually straight for better edge work, control, and more efficient cutting because the backing plate is directly over the pad. I'll have much more information on my website about the all-new white ammo polisher, the polisher bags, the pads, and the polishing fluid for anyone looking to simplify the paint polishing process. For the sides of the Jeep that just don't take the same abuse as the hood or the roof, meaning horizontal surfaces, I'm using a straight cut waffle finishing pad with exfoliate to bring back the depth and shine. In other words, I'm using a finishing pad with exfoliate instead of a sheer cutting pad with exfoliate because the vertical sides are just not that bad. So I'm about 3/4 of the way through polishing the Wrangler. Now what makes this so difficult and why I'm pouring sweat is, one, the paint is actually really hard, physically hard on the Jeep, but at the same time, you combine that with lots of little ins and outs and nooks and crannies, that kind of thing. Like an H1 Hummer is the absolute worst one to polish. This is up there top 5. Ironically, doing the Merce behind there, right there you can see, way easier. Lots of flat panels. The paint was relatively soft. And so you can kind of work your way all the way through. Nice long strokes here. You don't really get a whole lot of long strokes because you have these little things here, you know, things holding on the door. You got this here, got these little rubber parts on the hood. So when it becomes smaller little sections, it makes the polishing way more difficult and way more time consuming. So if you look at the trunk here, look at all these bars and things. So I got to get in there with a 3-inch. This will take me probably a solid hour just to get in there, where a solid hour on this, I could probably get the entire hood and probably most of the passenger side, but maybe 3/4 of it. So just something to keep in mind when you're working on Jeeps or cars that have these little nooks and crannies, like I said. Got to allocate appropriate time, but man, when this thing's done, it's gonna look amazing. Look at that. Pretty cool. For the smaller areas, I repeated the same step as before, meaning the wool pad and then the waffle pad as step 2, but this time with the LHR 75 and a 3-inch pad version of the shear and the waffle. Probably my favorite pneumatic tool ever. This thing is a beast. For those of you keeping track of the polishing process, this paint was rock hard. It was wildly unexpected. I did not think that Jeep was going to have this, and why the embedded mold and the lichen was so difficult to remove with the clay bar before, and why we needed to use a wool pad now. Certainly compared to the hundreds of other cars I've done that have the same issue, this was unique. I also used the 3-inch machine on the lights as well. Now the little remaining dots that you see right here, that's rust actually coming through the body of the metal housing, but at this point, it looks much better now. As for the metal bumpers, some areas had really deep rust, so I wire brushed it and put a few coats of fresh paint on it. Now, the bumper likely just needs to be replaced, but my goal here is just to get Jim excited about getting it out of the yard and rebuilding the Jeep again. If a little paint here or there helps remind him of what she once was, then it was worth the 5 minutes of spray paint makeup. Next, my brand new carpets arrived and they looked absolutely fantastic, but as I started to move all the wires around in the cabin, I realized he's just gonna have to rerun all these cables underneath my freshly laid carpet before having to pull them all up again, so it didn't make any sense to put them down right now until he reruns all those wires. For now, I replaced the seats, the center console, and the bench seat in the rear so he could at least sit in the Jeep when I surprise him later in the week. Next up were the dried out and crusty fender flares. Now these were really dragging the look and feel of the Jeep down, so I restored them with Frame Pro wipes. Now normally 1 to 2 wipes can go a really long way, but these flares were just so parched, so dry that I used an entire wipe on one driver's side fender, but it was totally worth it. The before and after here was huge, especially now that the paint had some life again, so the contrast between the two of them really looked good. After seeing the transformation on the flares, then I started getting really excited and I said, all right, look, we got to polish out the Kragers as well for some extra pop. For protection, I couldn't help myself but to go old school, so I used my secret weapon, which is skin sealant. Now, this is my first product I ever developed all those years ago. It's super easy on and off, and the shine and protection is very unique. It just fits right with the Jeep, and it looked fantastic when we were done. Listen, the mission here is to have him fall in love with the car again. You know, sometimes people just need this little kick in the pants to see it back the way that it was when he first got it, or close to it, you know? And then he's like, all right, I gotta rebuild this. It's like right after you wash the Taycan and go for a drive, you're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And it was like dirty 5 minutes earlier. I'm like, I don't know. I can't look at this thing anymore. As soon as it's clean, it's like a whole new life. Then I worked on the windows and removed the old stickers, and they looked absolutely fantastic. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Clean windows are the most underrated pop on a car. I really think it pulls everything together to have perfect glass on the car you're working on, so take your time here. Now, one thing to remember is on really neglected or super dirty windows, use a scrub pad to lift the junk first before wiping or scooping it up with a towel before it dries. This is going to help you avoid streaks. Finally, I dressed the tires and then waited for Jim to arrive to see his brand new baby.
Ooh, he's here.
Hey, what's up?
What's going on, man?
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Are you
too.
ready?
Yeah, man.
Come on in, check her out. Look at that. Crazy, right? Oh. It's like a totally different truck, right?
Oh, dude.
Crazy. I bet you didn't know it had this color underneath it, right? It was green. All this was green. Just nuts. And we painted this all up for you, just kind of inspire you again to get this thing back on the road. We clip this. I know you said we could clip that.
Yep.
But we polished the wheels. Check out the wheels here. Cleaned them up a bit. Got this re-dyed. Each one of these took on they were so dry that it took on so much material, and it looks 1,000 times better. Polished this all out. Worked on your roof, got that down. And then inside here, which we pulled everything out and then shampooed your seats. And then, did you put double-sided tape in here?
At one point, yeah.
Yeah, so we had to get that out with heat, which was really crazy. That was kind of a fun little project to do. The amount of black stuff that came out.
I believe it. I believe
awesome.
it. I believe it.
And then underneath your seats, I found 1,000 different bolts.
I'm sure.
Probably $25 worth of change. I don't know if you have any holes in your pockets or something. But I wanted you to do this. Get in. Tell me how it feels. It's been a long time, right? Crazy.
Oh, it feels like I got to get it going.
So what are your plans for it?
Well, I'm going to get it running this weekend. Yeah. Absolutely have to, because summer's almost over. So I got to get it running. I got to rerun the wires because they're obviously all shot.
Right.
And then enjoy it for the rest of my time, right?
Yeah.
And it'll never be driven in the winter again, ever.
There he is. I can't believe you got this thing running.
Yeah, man.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
That's
all
awesome.
Thanks to you guys. Gave me motivation to do it.
What did you do to get it running?
Well, I thought I was going to have to drop the gas tank.
Yeah.
And I opened the gas tank and I didn't smell veneer. And I realized I had pressurized the system way back when, and I never dropped the pressure.
And it held.
And it held.
Wow.
So that was good. Someone tried to steal the catalytic converter.
Oh, that's
so I fixed that.
All right, well, the only thing left to do is go for a ride.
Let's do it.
Let's go. The door work? Oh, all right,
Not yet. I got the parts on order for that. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go?
Smells much better.
Oh, dude. It's like when it was new. So out of practice. Woo!
This thing is awesome. All right, so how does it feel being back in the Jeep on the road?
Oh, it's amazing. I drove it around yesterday for a while after I got it going. It was, dude, I felt like I was 24 again. I'm not, right? There's a good 2 years of work here.
Yeah.
Right? But I mean, you know, if you're driving your dream car, it doesn't matter.
I'm just excited she's alive again.
Yeah. Best thing ever.
This was great, man. Congratulations.
Thank you,
I
sir.
can't believe you got it running.
Yeah.
I'm super excited for you. I'll see you out on the road.
Yes, sir.
All right.
You.
You got it, man. I'll see you later. There she goes. See ya. Woohoo. That is unreal. Look at that thing go. Well, guys, there you have it. Another one saved. If you have a car that needs some love, you know where to find me, Larry at ammonyc.com. I couldn't be more excited. Look at this guy go. I'll talk to you guys next week.